Is 3 basically going to be where you guys are going to stick, or could it go lower again?
3 is our last change.
Welcome to the Hooked on Movies podcast. I'm Zach Powell, and with me as always is Ben Lively.
Hi.
On today's show, we discuss where Mission Impossible Fallout stands among the rest of the Mission Impossible franchise, if the new Spike Lee joint lives up to the hype, and me and our special guest get to hype up our favorite movie of the year so far. But first, a word from our sponsor, Flex Tape.
Alexa, how tall is Mount Everest?
Over 1,000 pounds!
Thanks, Flex Tape. Our guest today is the founder of Kula's Movie Opinions, a Dean Scholar at the University of Texas at Austin, and the unironic president of his high school's chess club. We are pleased to welcome to today's show, Jake Kula.
Hey guys, thank you so much for having me on the show.
Of course. Mm-hmm. All right, Kula. So we're going to start off by asking you a series of rapid-fire questions so the audience can get to know you a little better. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. When did you first fall in love with movies?
Junior year of high school, when I ran out of other YouTube videos to watch, I started watching movie reviews.
Nice. And was there a particular movie, or was it just a ton of movies at once?
Ooh, Fight Club, actually.
Fight Club?
Yeah.
All right.
My first illegally watched movie on the also. Fun fact.
That's never getting off the internet.
Did you just admit to a crime?
I mean...
All right, moving on. All right, what is your favorite movie of all time and why?
Right now, Memento, because, which we're going to talk about later, but just the way it made me feel afterwards, as if nothing mattered. I don't know.
Wow. Nothing really mattered.
It's like, I don't know. I'd compare it to after I finished reading 1984, but I don't know. We can talk about that later. Memento.
Sure. Yeah. And then last one, what's one movie that you love more than anyone else? So what's one movie that you're the biggest fan of in the world?
Talladega Nights. It's hard to defend it because it's not exactly the smartest or most artsy movie in the world, but it just makes me laugh so much, and I can't explain it.
All right. All right, so we're gonna start this episode off with some movie news that dropped this week. This week was dominated by 2 massive movie news stories that could potentially have a drastic impact on 2 major areas of the film industry. We'll start with the announcement made by the Academy's Governors Board that detailed the following changes to the Oscars. Next year's show will be cut from 4 hours to 3 hours in an effort to make it more approachable for non-diehard movie fans. And to do this, they'll not be airing all of the awards, instead opting to show highlights of the smaller awards after commercial breaks. In addition, they announced a new Oscar category, Best Popular Film, which received a lot of backlash. And while they didn't give specifics about what the qualifications would be, many people feel that this is their way to give larger tentpoles in superhero movies a larger presence for the ceremony. So let's start with Ben. What are your thoughts on these changes to the Oscars?
Well, one of my least favorite parts of this is that they're having the smaller categories in the commercial breaks, which is just like a slap in the face to by smaller categories they probably mean like the technical filmmaking, or maybe even like the short films
or the documentary
shorts, and that's just a slap in the face to like the technical side of filmmaking, which is the arguably most important side of filmmaking. And then like the short films, Don Hertzfeldt, he made some of my favorite short films of all time, like The World of Tomorrow and It's Such a Beautiful Day. He responded on Twitter, and he was just very angry, and it made me feel for him because he got his career because his short films were nominated for Oscars, and that's how he got a lot of exposure. And so if nobody's watching that, then for future short creators, that's their way into getting into feature-length films. And so if they're not getting that same exposure, it's
And I already felt bad for them in previous year's Oscars because they always got played off. They got 1 minute, while Meryl Streep or Daniel Day-Lewis got 7 minutes. And these guys that probably work their whole lives to get on that stage, that'll only be up there once, get 30 seconds, then the music starts playing. Cool. Are you a fan of stubbing smaller people off the stage?
Well, when you put it like that, I mean, obviously, these are obviously legitimate concerns. I would be hesitant to see, to absolutely go against the idea until I see it in action, because it could be I don't know, they put it in the beginning, or I don't know how they would do it. They would make sure that the spotlight stays on smaller and very important technical aspects of the movie industry. But I don't know, I find it interesting that I don't know if they're gonna make it like a weight class where you have movies that grossed over a certain amount be in one area, and then have the smaller indie films in another. But if they can do it in a way that doesn't take the spotlight away, great. But obviously, I don't know if they can pull that off. But we'll see what happens.
I think on the smaller categories side and doing these highlights, I think one way they could do it more respectfully is if they kind of subbed in different categories and it was kind of like a revolving basis. So maybe this year it's the documentary short, animated short, and sound mixing, and then next year it's sound design, live action short, and then a different one. Like if you constantly were switching it up, but then I guess you could argue that the people might still get shafted because they're like, oh, I guess if I had been nominated for the short next year, I'd get on stage or whatever. So there's always going to be some sort of loser. But if you did a revolving type of category system and you always changed what categories get snubbed, if you will, on each night, then you're still giving value to the smaller categories instead of just saying, oh, these three are less important.
Yeah. That would also make the ceremony itself more interesting because there'd be hype leading up to seeing which one they would choose each year, and then people talking about what constitutes a film that's worthy of recognition in that particular role.
Yeah. And what are your thoughts on the best popular film category as a whole, Kula?
I mean, I feel like the box office is kind of enough, right? I mean, I don't like. I think the cool thing about the Oscars is you have people who have devoted their lives to recognizing what is important and unique about movies, to kind of explain it for people who are, maybe not as attuned to the smaller intricacies of filmmaking. Whereas when you introduce a popular movies category, it's basically like which one was the most fun, which is something kind of more innate in a human being when you go to see a movie. So I don't know. It kind of goes counter to the Oscars, but again, if they can pull it off in a way that is respectful to the smaller movies and in a way that's still fun and interesting, then I'd be open to it.
A lot of the backlash on Twitter from a lot of film Twitter and then a lot of like reporters is that this will be seen as the kind of ghetto version, quote unquote, of the Best Picture nominee. So this will be for the movies that maybe some of them could have deserved Best Picture, but we're not going to waste a spot on them. I'm thinking stuff like Black Panther, where we could give it a spot, but then you're taking away from whatever Spielberg's movie is this year, something like that. And so, we'll just vote for Black Panther for Best Popular Film, and then that'll save us from having to give a spot to Best Picture. And you'd probably have those conversations every year. Like, so if we had this category last year, Get Out and Dunkirk were two of the highest grossing movies of the year. Would those go in Popular Film, or would they go in Best Picture? And would they go in both, or would they like split their votes? There's just so many different different challenges I see arising with this, and I just don't see how it can have a positive impact on the ceremony other than it can get their viewership up a little bit. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, if you have the best popular film category, like what constitutes that, and what does that make the best film category? Like it's I don't know. Yeah, that seems a little weird. And then I do see like where they were going with it, I guess, though. Like it could be a good thing because there's a lot of movies that a lot of people see and really enjoy, that might deserve a spot in the Oscars, but might not get it just because of like their genre or whatever. Like there's no Best Picture nominee for a superhero movie. Not that I know of ever. Like The Dark Knight deserved one, didn't get one.
People wanted Logan last year. Even Wonder Woman got a push.
So it could be a good thing. Like Black Panther, I think, deserves some sort of award.
I'm pulling for Michael B. Jordan, supporting actor. Cross the fingers.
I can see that category as being useful for that, but I don't know. It's also very problematic.
I think it sets a dangerous precedent because a lot of people look to the Academy when it comes to what are the best films of the year. Obviously, they're the premier show, and if what I don't want to come across from this message is the best picture of the year is for artistic and independent movies, and those inherently can't be popular. And I'm afraid that's what could come across with this message is the popular movies are the superheroes and the blockbusters and the tentpoles, and then the best pictures are the smaller ones, and those aren't as important in some way. Like those can't be popular. And I think last year proved that they can be popular. I think the average box office for last year's Best Picture nominees was 75 to 100 million. Like that's good money. They're not like small movies. And I think getting nominated like helps with that, obviously. But when you say there's a difference between the best movie of the year and the best popular movie of the year, I think you're saying that Three Billboards and Shape of Water and Moonlight, La La Land, those can't be popular because La La Land and Moonlight were super popular. but I guarantee you they wouldn't be nominated for that category
Mm-hmm.
if they go by box office or, I guess, subjectivity.
Yeah.
Or budget.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another thing is if they go for box office and you cut it off at 100 million, will suddenly studios keep movies in for longer times or give them an Oscar push where they put them in later in the year to get that extra 2 million? If Ready Player One grossed 98 million and the cutoff is 100, is Warner Brothers going to put in, oh, we'll send it to a bunch of theaters and get it a huge push to get a nomination? Same thing with budget. So if it's a $75 million budget is what constitutes a popular movie, are you going to lift the budget by $5 million and waste a ton of money just so you can get it under that? Like, suddenly you're not necessarily being wise with how you're spending the money, and that money could, $5 million to boost a film's budget could fund a whole nother independent movie if you're looking at studios. And I think that could just lead to some stupid choices by executives.
Yeah, and another big thing with the Oscars is that movies, after they get an Oscar, you can see like the numbers they on Blu-ray sales and theater tickets after that, like it skyrockets.
Sure.
And so it would be interesting to see how that would affect like the Best Picture winners or other categories as well.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
IndieWire did a cool piece where they were part of the backlash from it, and they said these are the categories that should be done instead of Best Popular. And I'm going to run through the 7, and then both of you tell me which one you think should be switched out. So your favorite one of these.
Okay.
So Best Stunt Coordinator, Best Casting Director, First Time Film, Breakthrough Performer, Voice Performance, Ensemble Cast, or Original Movie Soundtrack. Which of those, if you were in charge of the Academy Board, would you put in? Ben?
Oh, okay. For me, it's between ensemble cast and casting director. There have been movies I've seen before where I wish that there was an Oscar for casting director because they deserve it. And like there's an old saying that 90% of directing is casting. And like with movies like Dazed and Confused, that entire cast, like most of it was just like unknown actors at the time, but then you get Matthew McConaughey and Ben Affleck and like all of that. There was so much talent that you need like a talented casting director to see and have that foresight of these people are great and they're good at these roles. Sure. So I think that deserves merit.
Yeah.
How much? Well, before I give my answer, how much does the director play into the casting? Because like if you already have a Best Director Oscar, then you know how much does it add to having a casting director?
Yeah. I mean, usually the director is there as well in casting, but I mean, I don't. Yeah, I depends on the film and how they're structured. But
and there's like 5 casting directors that I always see their names at the end of movies, and they'll never get an Oscar, which is like a crime because I don't know their names off the top of my head, but I'm like I've seen that name before, and it's like 4 or 5 people that direct all these great movies. All right, cool. Which of those would you put in the Oscars?
I'm tied between stunt coordinator just because I really like watching stunts, and I feel like they're also one of the more dangerous. I mean, jobs in Hollywood, but and breakout performance because one of the most common criticisms of Hollywood or the Oscars is recognizing people who have been in the industry for so long and not getting new blood into the system. And a breakout performance Oscar would definitely be able to highlight some of the more up and coming talent and keep it fresh and make sure that the new generation has a turn at being able to make its mark on film history. But stunt coordinator would also be too. Why can't you just add all of these? Honestly,
They have to keep it under 3 hours.
Exactly.
Funnily enough, I would pick. I just hit the mic. Funnily enough, I would pick one of the ones. So I think we cover 5 out of the 7. I would pick First Time Film, no question, because I'm just thinking back to all the different people who could get nominated for that and get kind of put on a stage. And I feel like that could be an opportunity to launch careers even more so. So something like Jordan Peele last year with Get Out, like that, he obviously poured his heart and soul into that movie, and that would have been really cool to see him on the stage. He did get original screenplay, but if he had lost that, maybe Greta Gerwig last year didn't get nominated. I'm thinking this year more. I'd love to have that just so that
director.
What?
Oh, I thought you were going to bring up the director of Blindspotting. That was
it was
directorial debut, right?
Carlos Lopez Estrada for Blindspotting. That'd be really cool. Bo Burnham, I would die if he got a nomination, and that'd probably be the only way he could. There's just so many first time filmmakers this year. The Hereditary guy that I feel like they're gonna get snubbed in February.
Yeah.
But if you had something like first time film, you could suddenly have Bo Burnham or Ari Aster or Carlos Lopez Estrada, all these like people who've come out with brilliant movies that aren't in Oscar bait time, and they could get their 5 minutes of the spotlight, and that would probably turn their careers. Not that any of them are going to struggle to get movies made now, but it would just take them to another level, I think.
Yeah.
All right,
True.
cool. The second news story that came out this week was about our favorite company ever, MoviePass. So they have been on the ropes, to say the least, for the past 3 weeks. They've lost, I think, tens of, if not hundreds of thousands of customers in the span of 3 weeks. And in order to kind of save face, they came out with their new announcement. It starts on August 15th. They were going to raise their price to $15. They've changed that. It's now still only $10. The biggest changes are you only get to see 3 movies a month. You can see more than 3 movies a month, but you have to pay, I think, $5 or $6 for those. But there is no more surge pricing, and you get to see most new releases. Most is in quotes. They've said that in the past, but who really knows at this point? Kula, do you think this will save MoviePass, or do you think this is just another one of their like press releases that'll change in 2 weeks?
Hard to say, but I would take something that's less economically like great for the users of MoviePass and sustainable over something that's awesome and unsustainable.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it could work, but I definitely want to wait to see what happens, because they obviously have to have a lot of things to figure out as far as funding and whatnot. So I think I would say I'm more likely to work than not.
Okay. I was super excited about this when I saw it, because I was counting down the days when I would have to switch to AMC. I've been on MoviePass since September. They've saved me literally $800. So I was like, this will save my company. This is good. I'll see 3 movies a month for free. I'll pay $10 to see 2 more, 5 movies a month. I'm good. And then 2 days ago, I wanted to see BlackkKlansman in theaters. I went to Cinemark West Plano, and I got a brutal reminder of what kind of company MoviePass is. And so they basically informed me that they have the power to take away showtimes at any time they want. And even though they had showtimes for the Cinemark in Plano earlier in the day, now I couldn't see any showtimes. Not for Incredibles, not Mamma Mia 2, for sure not the new releases for the weekend. And they said, you just need to check your theater, the MoviePass app before you leave. And if we happen to change it on the drive there, we're sorry. I mean, we can't really refund you. And so that interaction with that customer service person, shout out to them. I ended up going to Studio Movie Grill, so they still paid for my ticket. That reminder showed me that as excited as I was about this announcement, I can't trust it at all. I feel like in a month's time, their stock price is going to be 3 cents again, and they're going to come out with some new thing that says, oh, now we're $20 for 3 movies a month, or we'll match the plan of AMC. In all honesty, September is going to be it's looking not that great for movies in terms of the month of September. So I'm just going to probably keep MoviePass for August 15th and on, see the end of August movies, see 3 or 4 in September. And then by the time Oscar season comes around in October through December, I'm hoping Alamo Drafthouse comes out with their plan, because I would switch to that in a heartbeat. But if I have to switch to AMC to see those, my loyalty is waning for MoviePass.
Yeah.
Are you in agreement, Ben?
Yeah. I still don't think it's sustainable. Like, it's cutting it down to 3 movies a month. I mean, especially in areas where the ticket prices average at $10 or more, like in New York or LA.
Yeah, it's up to like 15 in those.
Yeah, exactly. You're still, like, after 1 ticket, you still can't make a profit, even if people are only seeing 1 ticket a month.
Yeah.
So I don't think that. I think this is just another PR thing to try to calm their base down.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if they'll go out of business or just like make it how it used to be, like $60 a month for, or maybe it was a year. I don't remember.
It was like 50.
No, it was like $50 a month. Yeah, it was ridiculous. But yeah, I don't think it. And it's so weird. I don't think I've been to a different theater other than a Studio Movie Grill for the past like month, because MoviePass only works at Studio Movie Grill. I don't know if anybody in the other states are having that same problem, but yeah.
I went to an AMC to see was it 8th grade? Yeah, but but you're right though. Studio Movie Grill is the only reliable theater, so I don't know. We'll see.
And there's only so long I can stay on Studio Movie Grill.
Yeah.
They've got these chairs that make you lean forward.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Makes you miss AMC.
Yeah.
I will say the only way a subscription movie business can survive from a business standpoint, because MoviePass, it's dead in the water. AMC, if you'll notice, the months leading up to their launch of AMC Stubbs A-List, they started doing this higher level food, kind of like what's it called? Like really good food, kind of higher level food. Gourmet. Thank you. Gourmet food. They had their kind of gourmet pretzel bites, and they had like pizzas and flatbreads, and they were raising up their prices for their food, and they were doing that because they knew they were going to launch this thing, I'm assuming. So now when you go there and you start getting used to this gourmet food that they can charge more for, even if it's not that good, suddenly instead of paying $8 for popcorn, you're paying $15 for flatbread that's not that good. And so they lose $10 on the ticket sale. And actually they don't lose as much. They probably lose what, $7? Because they have to pay $7 to the studio, they get $3. But then that $7 that they just lost, if you pay $15 for a flatbread, they make $8 off you. And if that's $8 they take from Cinemark or Studio Movie Grill or whatever. So the same concept works with Alamo Drafthouse, where I know we go to Alamo Drafthouse and our friends go to Alamo Drafthouse when we're in Austin, and we spend a ton of money at Alamo Drafthouse. Their shakes are like $8, their sandwiches are $15.
But it's worth it.
And if you go during lunch and dinner, you can go in saying no food for me, and then you see the food and the menu, and it happens every time, $20 bill. And so they can survive, I think, off this, because their goal would be get people away from Cinemark, get people away from Studio Movie Grill and AMC. And once you're with us, we're going to push our food as hard as you can, because that's how we're going to make our money. I mean, that's a more sustainable business model and one I'm willing to support. But MoviePass, it's reaching its last legs.
Wait, so when do you, if you had to predict when they go under, what month?
Before these changes, I didn't think it'd make it to October 1st. After these changes, I bet it makes it through Christmas break with this plan, and then they raise the price to $30. I'd say by the time Christmas break hits and it's prime Oscar season, they raise their price to $30, or they go under, or they say a movie a month or something like that. They drastically change their plan. But I think they save themselves 2 months maybe. But I mean, poor CEO, he just keeps having to lie to people, and it's really depressing.
Oh, poor guy.
He went from Netflix to this. What a jump. All right, so that wraps up our movie news segment of the show. So now we're going to go into the new releases that have come out over the past 2-ish weeks. We're going to start with the blockbusters, and the major blockbuster on everyone's mind, what some tout as the best action movie of the decade, Mission Impossible Fallout. It stars Tom Cruise, Simon Pegg, Rebecca Ferguson, directed by something McQuarrie. Help me, Anthony McQuarrie? Christopher, thank you. Christopher McQuarrie. This one, more than all the other Mission Impossibles, kind of picks up right where the last one took off from. Ben, what were your thoughts on Mission Impossible Fallout?
On Mission Impossible Fallout?
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the action set pieces. I saw, have you seen like the behind the scenes of how they did everything? Yeah, definitely look that up if you haven't seen it. They strapped an IMAX camera onto the cinematographer's head and had him jump out of the plane right in front of Tom Cruise, and the bathroom fight scene I loved because it focused more on fight choreography instead of shaky cam and cutting on the action.
And that bathroom scene was insane.
Yes, yeah, and there was the motorcycle chase. It was nice, and there was another one.
The skydiving scene, the helicopter chase.
Yeah, Tom Cruise actually learned how to fly a helicopter.
Yeah, he's now a licensed helicopter pilot.
That's so awesome. Yeah, I really enjoyed the effort that they put into this movie, because they could have just, what's the word for that? Just
phoned it in.
CGI'd it.
Yeah, they could have phoned it in or CGI'd it and probably got like the same box office numbers or very similar. Yeah. But they put a lot of effort into it. I would say they're lacking a little bit on the story aspect of the movie. It's a little convoluted and I don't know, just kind of straightforward. Like convoluted but straightforward at the same time.
But you don't necessarily go to these two.
Oh, yeah, no, exactly.
I would argue the point that the box office would be the same if they CGI'd it, because I think why a majority, and maybe this is wrong, but I think the reason why a majority of people go to see these movies and get excited about these movies, at least I can speak for myself personally, is because I know he does his own stunts. If I if it's another action movie where he's CGIing it, I mean, it's cool that you're skydiving, but you've seen that's in G.I. Joe. Like, that's nothing special. But the fact that he learned how to skydive, I think that's the main selling point. And the second he can't do his stunts anymore, the series is over. Because I feel like, oh, he hangs off a plane, or oh, he climbs this building, or oh, he learns to fly a helicopter. That earns you $25 million. I literally think that's the impact of it. Because I think if you don't have that mythos of Tom Cruise doing these stunts or Tom Cruise breaking his leg, I think you lose. It just becomes another action movie.
I mean, but G.I. Joe didn't flop at the box office.
I mean, or right? Skyscraper. I mean, these movies flop. There's action movies that flop all the time.
Oh, does Skyscraper flop?
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, not in China, but I'm talking American box office, domestic.
Okay. Yeah.
Kula, did you like Mission Impossible Fallout?
I did like it. I agree with a lot of what Ben said, in that it's nice to see that they're really trying to make an effective action sequences.
Yeah.
I think Tom Cruise just chooses his movies based on which stunts they'll let him do, because I'm not saying The Mummy was. I didn't even see The Mummy, but but he was like, yeah, I just really wanted to do like a sequence where a plane was falling, and so we did that sequence. I'm like, all right, Tom Cruise, you go. But
such a cool.
The only sequence in the trailer.
Yeah.
But yeah, and obviously the bathroom fight sequence gave me some John Wick vibes, and that when a punch goes, it looks like it hurts. There's a shot of a guy getting hit in the face with a laptop, and it looks so painful, and he goes unconscious. And sorry, spoilers, but
no, you're good.
But yeah, and on the topic of plot, there are characters that need to trust people that they shouldn't trust, and characters that need to distrust people that they have no reason to doubt. And no, I mean, like Zach said, you don't come to these movies for plot necessarily, but when you see that, it's like, okay. Like, it's not super bothersome because you're there for the action sequences, but it is there. And one thing, I might take the steam out of, or the wind out of Zach's sails with this one, but there's a couple sequences with, fake masks where you don't know who is who. They're like trademark of a Mission Impossible franchise, but they're really fun to watch, and like nice gotcha moments. Yeah. And overall, a very fun movie, and it'll probably be the best action movie that comes out this year.
What other contenders are there?
Venom,
so far?
I guess.
Oh wow! I hope that's not the next contender.
Why is that trailer so popular? The one for Venom?
People make fun of it. I hope.
I don't think so. I think people are really hyped for it. It's like the most.
I think Venom's just a popular character.
Time, I think.
That movie looks like it's going to be the worst.
It doesn't look good. That's why I'm wondering.
I hope it's good.
Yeah.
I don't see a scenario where I walk out of that being like, that was fun. I had a good time.
I think I saw that it was the most watched trailer of all time or something.
And was it like tons of dislikes like Ghostbusters? Or?
No.
Wow.
I have no idea.
All right, yeah, look up how many views it has.
Yeah, let me look
I'll say some stuff I like about this movie. I thought Henry Cavill was amazing. I haven't been a fan of his. I don't like his Superman, and I don't like Man from U.N.C.L.E., but I did think this was really fun. Mustache was on point, as always. But I thought his scenes with Tom Cruise were the best ones in the movie. The bathroom fight we talked about a ton. That one was really cool. When he pumps his fist, that's amazing. Yeah. And then
he reloads his
fist. He reloads his fist. And then the helicopter scene was really cool. And just whenever they were going neck and neck, it was amazing. I think that just speaks to how good Tom Cruise is, because I'm assuming he doesn't get close to double Henry Cavill's age? Isn't Henry Cavill like 30?
I know Tom Cruise is 56.
Yeah, so close to double, maybe not quite, but the fact that he's neck and neck with this guy that's 20 years younger than him is pretty impressive. I also thought Angela Bassett was really good. I have a couple of things I disliked, but you guys go ahead and talk more about what were your like standout moments or standout characters and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, the scene that like gave me shivers was the Halo jump scene.
Oh yeah, that was good.
High altitude, low open. The fact that it was one shot when they could have. I mean, there is a cheated cut, I think. Yeah. But
the lightning flash.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and when he like hits the camera.
But the shot from when he's in the hangar or like in the back of the airplane to when he jumps, that's not cut. Right, there was no cheat there, which is the cool.
That's really cool. I think just and a very small thing that I really enjoyed was how when they were falling and Henry Cavill's like oxygen tank became unhooked, they like any other movie would have cut to a close-up of that oxygen tank and the little thing waving around, and then had a close-up of Tom Cruise like plugging it back in. But when you're watching it from like this wide angle and seeing the ground approach him in the background, and he's just like fumbling around with his oxygen tank, you can't see what he's doing or if he's successfully plugged it back in or anything. It raises the tension so much, and I was like on the edge of my seat, even though that they're both going to survive. I'm on the edge of my seat. Just
I was watching an interview with Simon Pegg, and he was talking about how the whole cast wrapped, and then Tom Cruise was going to stay there for 2 more weeks to do the helicopter jumps, and how he had to do it like 30 to 50 times to get it right, and they did it a ton of times. And so Simon Pegg was giving kind of the mood of the crew as everyone was rapping but him, of like it was kind of somber and like, please let me see you again, like don't die. Like everyone was like genuinely scared because they're like, you're jumping out of a plane 30 to 50 times, like you're tempting fate as much as you can. Kula, did you have any other like standout performances or moments?
I don't think we've talked about the Paris chase scene as much as
the
we
motorcycle
should.
scene?
Or have we? I don't know. You're on one, you really feel like you're going through Paris, and there are like civilians in peril, and like that there are stakes, and like there are gunshots going off in a major city, kind of a little bit reminiscent of Heat, if you guys have seen that movie, in which the civilians are in peril, and there are people trying to escape others, and I just thought it was really high octane, and obviously being able to see Tom Cruise's face throughout the whole thing really adds a level of realism to it that you don't see in action movies these days. Yeah. And I agree with Zach in that this is definitely Henry Cavill's best performance so far, even though he could always be better, but these movies don't ask of their actors too much emotional control. It's more of physicality which they ask, and I think that absolutely delivers. Yeah.
I mean, it's like watching a carnival or a stunt show. Like it's just it's fun to watch.
Hence stunt coordinator.
Yeah, we're all agreed that if that's an Oscar category, this movie would be nominated, to say the least.
Oh, and by the way, Venom's trailer isn't the most. It's the most watched Spider-Man trailer of all time. But it's 17th most watched.
So it beat out Homecoming with Robert Downey.
Yeah,
that's impressive. That's crazy.
I don't get it, but okay.
People just like Venom
and Tom Hardy.
I guess so. I had no idea that there was such a market for that. But
so I had the lowest score for this movie. I think I was probably the most disappointed, and I'm probably the least high on it. I want to go over some of the reasons I'm not as high on it as you two are, and then you can refute me or tell me why I'm wrong, and we'll get on our way. Probably the most thing I was disappointed about, and my biggest complaint, was with Simon Pegg's character, who has consistently been my favorite part of this franchise, along with the stunts. Obviously Tom Cruise is amazing, but like of the rest of the movie, like Simon Pegg's always like the comic relief. His jokes always land. Huge fan of Cornetto, so it's cool to see somebody like that getting a shot. And on this movie, it seems like he kind of transitioned. In Rogue Nation, he was on the way there, but this movie kind of completed his transition to more of like an agent instead of the goofy sidekick character. And with this, I felt like his main character traits were just being scared and bumbling, and kind of being the bumbling British scared guy. His jokes I didn't really laugh at, which was super disappointing, and it just made me sad because he went from like the competent but funny guy to just he's funny because he's scared guy, and the latter is I just don't find funny at all. So Simon Pegg. I also really, really missed Jeremy Renner's character. I know that Henry Cavill was supposed to be kind of the replacement for like the other action star, the younger one that's kind of up against Tom Cruise, but I feel like Henry Cavill, as good as he was and as good as some of the scenes he was in were, I still don't feel like he lived up to kind of the brooding nature that Jeremy Renner had. Like when Jeremy Renner's on screen for Ghost Protocol and Rogue Nation, I always felt like this guy could match Tom Cruise. And as good as their scenes were together, I just always felt like Tom Cruise always had a hand up on Henry Cavill for whatever reason. That's just kind of my takeaway. And then also, I liked a lot of the other scenes. So the bathroom scene, obviously we talked about. Motorcycle scene with school skydiving. The helicopter scene for me is the worst big piece out of building climb, plane hang, and helicopter. I would rank helicopter last, and I enjoyed and thought the movie peaked with the skydiving, and even like there was a couple of plot twists at the beginning in the hospital room that I really liked, and kind of those were my highlights and peaks for me at the first 30 minutes, and I was kind of done by the time the helicopter scene wrapped up.
Really?
Hot take. What do you guys go ahead? What are your thoughts on those three?
Did you think the helicopter scene was too long?
I thought it was too long, and I thought it was cool when he was trying to fly above them and like drop onto them and trying to crash the helicopters.
Right.
I thought the stuff before and after that was a little long. I could do without the cliff stuff and the crashing. But I thought when it was helicopter v helicopter, it was cool, maybe a little long. And then the stuff surrounding the helicopter, I was just like, come on, let's go.
Yeah, I thought it was just a little long, but I mean, if you film that and he put so much effort into that,
for sure.
the stuff as much of that as you can. But yeah, it was a little long in my opinion. But what was the other
Simon Pegg, Jeremy Renner.
Yeah. Simon Pegg, yeah, I agree with that. He wasn't very funny, but once again, I didn't see the movie for the script or that.
He was also a damsel. Like I think there are two or three different moments when like he was like the person that needed to be saved. I'm like, that's interesting. Yeah. And then, you know, like one of the female characters were what saved him. So I mean, not saying like that it was that saves Simon Pegg not being as funny as the other movies, but I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely cool. I just wish he can be a damsel without being the bumbling coward character.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That was more my issue, less than that he was like not the hero.
Yeah.
And I disagree with your Henry Cavill take. I see Henry Cavill as stronger than Tom Cruise. Like when I watched it, I guess just because I had seen him as Superman.
Yeah. He just looks scary.
Yeah, he does, especially with the mustache. But I
think Henry Cavill's stronger, but I always thought that in terms of like outsmarting. So like Jeremy Renner, I think they go head to head, and I always feel like Jeremy Renner, like intelligence wise, is neck and neck. But like Henry Cavill, just with no spoilers, I didn't think his intelligence and his plans were near what Jeremy Renner's were. Yeah, okay. That was more my take.
Hot take. I don't remember Jeremy Renner's character that well. Yeah, I guess just because for me this was the 6th movie, right?
Yes.
For me, the 5th movie was one of the most forgettable besides the second.
That's fair.
In the franchise. And so I didn't really see an impact there. But I remember liking him in Ghost Protocol, but yeah. I don't know.
And what's your favorite one? We won't go into full rankings, but would this be your favorite one or
Ghost Protocol?
Okay.
I'm a huge Ghost Protocol as well.
All right. Yep, Ghost Protocol as well.
All right.
I'd probably rank this one lower, but it's still good. I still gave it a positive review. I just had my issues with it.
For me, it's Ghost Protocol, this one, and then 1, 3, 2.
Okay.
Or no, 1, 3, 5, 2.
Okay.
I haven't seen Rogue Nation, and the only one I've seen recently is Ghost Protocol, but I do absolutely love Ghost Protocol, so yeah.
I'd probably put Ghost Protocol and the first one and Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah, that's the third one.
And maybe Rogue Nation all before Fallout.
Whoa.
Maybe. I may put Fallout at like 4 or 5. But who knows? We could rewatch them. Our opinions change.
That's one thing that I do think the third one had over this one is the villain. So Philip Seymour Hoffman is he's Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah.
And this guy was... I thought that this was the Russian guy from Star Trek.
Anton Yelchin.
Like, I know he was dead, but I thought that they had, like, filmed his scenes and, like, digitally replaced him or something before. But he looked so similar to Anton Yelchin.
And they talked the same.
The same.
Were on point.
So, yeah. That was... And also, another thing, it might have been just me, but... His wife, Tom Cruise's wife, and the girl, I forgot who that girl was.
That's Rebecca Ferguson.
Ferguson. I forgot who she was, and I thought it was his wife or something. Like when I was watching it the first time. Yeah, no, I guess it was just me.
Yeah, I didn't remember the Rogue Nation as much either, but after watching like a video reminding me of it, apparently her arc is the same as it was. She doesn't have much development. Yeah.
There you go.
But I can't speak to it. I haven't seen Rogue Nation since it came out.
Right.
All right. Moving into the indies and smaller movies we saw over the past 1 or 2 weeks. Let's start out with Spike Lee's new movie, BlackkKlansman. BlackkKlansman. It is the true story of Ron Stallworth, who was the first African-American police officer in the Colorado Springs Police Department. And he decides that his first, mission or assignment as a part of the intelligence team there is to infiltrate the Ku Klux Klan division or chapter in Colorado Springs. This movie's gotten a lot of acclaim. Kula, did it live up to the hype for you?
No, but here's the thing. Spike Lee has a way of delivering his message in a way that's not exactly, I don't want to say nuance. Like, I mean, nuance is the word. So, I think he uses, and when he has a character speaking dialogue, instead of having him say something that would, or her build that character, he has him or her say something that he believes and that attributes to the theme of the movie, which kind of takes me out of it. One of the, in my opinion, the most important parts of movies is getting to know a character, seeing a character, and then learning more about the human experience through how that character changes or doesn't change. And I don't know, that at least I didn't feel like any of the characters had any real significant arcs, or if I could, I can't really compare anyone I know in real life to characters in this movie. But I did not hate this movie. I just, I think I need to learn to appreciate Spike Lee a little bit more on more viewings, but it's not something that I intuitively appreciate as much as movies with better characters or more nuance, such as Blindspotting, which we'll talk about later, and Get Out, or I think Training Day, Django. There are other movies I think tackle these themes a little more effectively. Show Don't Tell. But I know that's a lot, so I'll let you guys take me down.
Yeah.
So have you seen any other Spike Lee movies?
Just He Got Game.
Just He Got Game.
Yeah, I realize he has a very distinctive way of getting his message across.
I mean, in this movie, I sort of respected it, but also didn't like how preachy it was, because like you could feel the anger in the script and how the last 10 minutes especially, but in certain parts of this movie it was just as if he forewent trying to write in his message into, like you said, weaving it into the characters, and just there were 3 or 4 scenes where it was literally a person on a pulpit preaching the message of the movie, or like the opposite of the message of the movie in an ironic way. And I don't like that kind of filmmaking either, but I think this is like a response to the whole
political climate,
like the political climate, obviously, but like how
What political climate?
wait, is there political?
So, like he showed that
disagreement?
video of Trump saying there were bad people on both sides, and trying to give it like some
that's
sort
alluded
of
to.
It comes out on the anniversary of Charlottesville for a reason,
right. And this film seemed like the counterpoint to that whole there's bad people on both sides kind of thing. He's like saying with this movie, racism is always bad and it can't be redeemable. And so I don't know, it felt like powerful when through this movie. So yeah.
All right, so I am a much bigger fan of this movie than you guys are. I definitely think it has its flaws. I gave it a 7 out of 10 for some context, which for me means not favorite of the year, but still really, really good and definitely worth seeing. I'll go through some of the reasons why I liked it, maybe provide some counterpoints to what you guys are saying, and try and convince the people listening why they should give it a chance. So first of all, John David Washington, which is Denzel's son, and Adam Driver were amazing. Maybe amazing little song. We're really good. I thought Adam Driver was really good. I thought John David Washington, he's only done like one TV show, so I think for his like feature film or like his kind of introduction to the popular like stage, that was really good. The comedy was really great, and the movie was over the top in a lot of ways. A lot of the KKK stuff, obviously it's racist, but it was so over the top, almost satirizing some of it. Just kind of, not to say that people are stupid, but they definitely had like, one of the guys was it was the bodyguard from I, Tonya. His character I laughed at a bunch.
Yes.
Not all the jokes land. There was one specific joke that just was silent in our theater. I was like, ooh, that really didn't land. But really a lot of that, the comedy between it's a black guy infiltrating the KKK, and that's insane, and Spike Lee kind of embraces that insanity, provides comedy to it, to this really what could be really dark subject matter in these trying times, and I laughed a bunch. I really liked the comedy and think it's worth for the comedy alone. I liked aspects of the ending. the last 10 minutes, not to go into spoilers, but the last 10 minutes kind of take a creative choice that will land for some, won't land for others, and some people will be in the middle. I was iffy on that, but prior to that 10 minutes, the way the ending was going kind of worked for me. It was a little kind of sappy at points.
Oh yeah.
Which I didn't really like, but I would say the climax of the movie, if not the ending, is what I'm trying to say. The climax really worked for me when it kind of got intense and there's an explosion at some point. That part worked for me. And then I thought, I think his name is Topher Grace, who played David Duke. I thought his stuff with both Ron Stallworths, where whenever that dynamic was on screen, whether it was John David Washington and Topher Grace or Adam Driver and Topher Grace, whenever that interaction was happening, I loved it as well. Yeah. I thought he did a great David Duke, especially they show David Duke at the end and kind of his mannerisms. I thought he got that perfectly. Yeah. And I thought it was interesting. His goal is to be a politician, and he's still alive and he's still trying to be a politician. And I thought he played it perfectly as kind of that politician mindset where, like, obviously I don't agree with his stuff, but like he's trying to come across as likable as he can be with a Confederate flag hanging behind him. I would say to the preachy scenes aspect, it's definitely preachy as a whole, but those two scenes where they just had people talking and preaching the message to you, one of those didn't work for me, and that was the one with the old guy just telling that story. That did not work for me, not defending that at all. The other one with the Black Panther head guy, that one actually really worked for me, and I really liked that scene because sure, there's shots where it's just him on a stage preaching to this black student council for the local college, but also while he's talking, really cool shots of like the students and the emotions coming off their face as they're hearing the message and how impactful it is to them hearing that like they're valuable and that you don't have to hide like being black or being who you are, and just hearing that response. Like I don't know if that's like the first time they've heard that, or I know for the time that's definitely not what your mind would go to, but just seeing kind of like their emotions and their emotional response to that, I thought kind of saved that scene from just being guy stands on stage and preaches the message. So that one actually really impacted me. I'll just list off the things I didn't like, and then you guys can talk about it a little bit more. The very preachy, I agree with. I didn't like that. The score really didn't work for me. It's kind of like they have this main rock theme, and every time it plays over some nature shots, I'm just like, what? Why are we doing this? A few of the supporting performances didn't work for me. I didn't like the wife character, the KKK wife, if you will. And then a lot of the stuff with the college, I alluded to the college council earlier, a lot of those storylines didn't work for me. And then I think what you were going for earlier with Spike Lee is he's very heavy-handed with his message, and he doesn't deliver it with very much finesse. And I think sometimes that can work in a movie like Do the Right Thing, where it's heavy-handed with purpose, and that heavy-handedness lends itself to this giant climax at the end. And that really works for Do the Right Thing. And I think it didn't really work here because there wasn't that huge tension build. And I think with that tension build, it allows you to kind of thread the heavy-handed message through the tension. But with this movie, there wasn't as much tension. And so it's just a super heavy message in your face. And I thought that there's two allusions to Trump in the movie. There's a thing about making it great or something. And then there's another thing like, how would anyone ever elect David Duke to the presidency? I was like, okay, wink at us. That's what we're living in. President of the United
States. Yeah, he really.
And he's like, they could never do that. And he's like, how could you be so naive?
Yeah, and it's like Spike's looking at the camera.
Yeah.
Those I was like, okay, that's a little cheek, like tongue in cheek, whatever. But at the end, it goes full on kind of attack Trump mode.
Yeah.
And I thought that was the most heavy-handed part. I think it was impactful, and I think everyone in the audience left with a pit in their stomach, not going into specifically what it was. But I still thought it wasn't as impactful as I think he wanted it to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And like Kula, you were saying that more subtle messages like affect you more. But I think he wasn't trying to be subtle. I think he was saying that I think he was saying that like we've tried to be subtle and it's not you're not listening. Yeah. So here is the message in black and white. Plain. Yeah. Here it is.
I mean, it's neo-Nazis. Yeah, we're dealing with neo-Nazis and KKK members.
Right, yeah, these are terrible people. I
guess maybe subtlety isn't the best word. More like show don't tell is more what I would be going for. You know, does it mean like there's the scene Zach was talking about with the black civil rights leader talking to a group of college students. There was some really effective imagery in there. Other than that, I think it was more just shots of people talking, and I'm like, well, this might be, intercut or like move the camera in an interesting way or intercut it with imagery or something like that. It's just, I don't know. And then, I think you put it well earlier when you said it's either preaching a message or preaching the exact opposite of the message in an ironic way, which is done over and over again. And I agree with Zach as far as the comedy does work for the most part, and then the performances are good. It's just when it's laden down with the rest of it, I thought pacing suffered a little bit.
Oh yeah, I think my least favorite part of this movie was like the transitions between scenes, which is very sloppy. I think, and a lot of that is because he was just trying to like get these one point after another to the audience, and without much thought of how to weave it together. Like especially that Trump scene, it's so jarring. Not when he's like in the
last 10 minutes or in the middle?
No, in the middle where he's like, how could we elect David Duke, the most racist person on earth, to the but like the scene, it was that scene and then just this other scene that's completely unrelated right after, and it was just very jarring, and that happened a few times.
Especially considering the movie takes place in the mid to late 70s. It's like you feel like no one was talking about this back then, and not that they have to, like, it's not like they're going for a perfect accuracy, but it's still like it takes you out of the movie a little bit, since it is in the 70s, and then they're talking about issues that are more prominent today than they were back then. I mean, like, in this, as far as specifics go,
I think broadly, I would agree. I think he's broadly trying to connect what's happening today with what was happening in the 70s.
I agree with that.
But I do think that he does fail at that, which I think is what you're alluding to, in that was his goal, was to connect, but at some points you're putting a little bit too much of what the terrible that's happening today into the 70s. Like, it's not a direct correlation, and he was trying to make it like a one-to-one thing when it's not. They're both bad, but like they're bad in different ways.
There's bad people on both sides.
The 70s and the 2010s are bad.
Oh boy.
So I would say this is not a perfect movie. It has its flaws. Obviously, we've talked about them quite a bit, but I do think the three main performances and the comedy makes this worth seeing, especially in this kind of late July, August, September area. This is going to be one of the top movies in the theaters, I think, hopefully for the next couple of weeks. Okay. Everything we said on BlackkKlansman? All right, let's transition. I've been waiting to talk about this movie since March. Me and Ben first saw this at South by Southwest, where we also got to see the director and the two stars. It is called Blindspotting, directed by first-time filmmaker
Carlos
Lopez Estrada. Thank you. It was written and co-stars two best friends in real life, David Diggs and Rafael Casal. It took them 9 years to write, and it shows. I love this movie a lot. I think it's the best of the year so far. I know Ben really likes it as well, maybe not as high. Kula, what are your thoughts on it?
I agree with you in that I liked it. It's my favorite theater experience so far, best movie of the year so far. And that the first half of the movie is very, even though it's tackling very touchy issues, it's a very funny movie. Like, I went to see it with my mom, sister, and brother, so a pretty wide like spectrum of ages, and we are all laughing because it takes these two guys who are in basically a moving company, and just shows them going about their day, and like just the things that they do. I don't want to spoil it, but the two actors are so charismatic and likable, even though they don't necessarily do the most likable things. It's just very fun to watch, and just it feels like you get to know them throughout the runtime. And it also, one of the things that's fantastic about this movie, the script, I didn't know it took 9 years to write, but that it definitely shows in that it's very clever and very perceptive. And as far as the second half of the movie goes, it definitely starts to hit you hard as emotionally, because now that you are invested in these characters and you see them going through more difficult and trying circumstances, you can see that the problems that are going on in this community based on how they're reacting to these situations. And visual inventiveness is also, I think, a very good, or a big plus to this movie, and that there's a dream sequence, and the way some of the blocking in this movie and how it shows certain characters where they are in their emotional development, I thought was really interesting. And Daveed Diggs is obviously is a rapper, for those of you who don't know, and he incorporates this into certain parts of the script and his emotional performance, and I thought worked very well. And in a nutshell, that's why I think this movie is absolutely worth seeing if you haven't yet.
Yeah. I really like Carlos Lopez Estrada's work doing the music videos of Clipping, which is Daveed Diggs. Daveed Diggs. Daveed Diggs' rap group Clipping. He did the music videos for him, and I really like him. I didn't see him until after I saw this movie, but it made me appreciate his directorial style a little bit more and understand it a little bit more. When I first saw it at South by, there were like 2 or 3 scenes that I guess the dream sequence that I thought were like a little bit student filmy. I guess I've just seen, maybe it was a point in my life where I'd seen too many student films and it was just making parallels. But I mean, looking back, I think it was well done. The whole movie. I really liked it. The whole movie, but
I'll talk about it.
Yeah,
And why I loved it so much. So I tweeted or wrote somewhere when I first walked out of this movie that I love the feeling you get when you see one of your favorite movies of the year, and I felt that after Blindspotting, and I felt that after Blindspotting both times. I was kind of, the first time I saw it, I was not in shock, like, oh, I'm in shock, but like pretty surprised by how much I was receptive to it. I really enjoyed how they balanced the Black Lives Matter versus Blue Lives Matter movement. Because we obviously live in Texas, and a lot of people in Texas were the primary supporters of Blue Lives Matter. It started in Dallas with the Dallas riot a couple years ago. And so growing up here, going to high school here, going to college here, everyone around me, not even that I know, but just people around me in general, if you ask them black or blue lives or all lives, like they're going to say blue or all. And they don't really get kind of what the Black Lives Matter means or what it's saying. And so kind of being raised in that environment and then seeing this movie that so accurately portrays what what people are saying when they say Black Lives Matter was so powerful to me. They have one moment in the movie, it kind of spells it out. You see the whole movie is reaching this climax of just this black man that's haunted by this
traumatic experience.
Yeah, thank you. And so he's been just in fear for the past 5 days, and we've kind of experienced that fear with him. We've been scared with him. We've been heartbroken with him. And then he has this encounter with a police officer at the very end, and you see in the background of this police officer's house, I believe, this Blue Lives Matter poster, and that just it literally hit me because I was just so engrossed in the movie. And then seeing that, I was like, oh, that must look really bad when that's the response to the Black Lives Matter movement that it gets. And always being on the other side, not that I was Blue Lives Matter, but just that was the environment that I was in, and seeing that was the response everyone was giving to it. Obviously, because I'm not from Oakland or a big black community, just seeing from that perspective, what a black man or a black woman, like they would live that. And then they're having this movement trying to say, this is how we feel we're being treated. And then that's the response that white America, quote unquote, gives. It was just heartbreaking to me. And it was like, just gut wrenching that like, that's just so bad. And I wanted to apologize on behalf of my city and the people that I surround myself with. Like, I'm so sorry that was our response.
It was the moment that affected me most in this movie. And I thought about it for just months after. It's in the trailer. It's the kid like comes up to Daveed Diggs, and he like starts punching him or roughhousing or whatever, yeah. and Daveed Diggs is just not in the mood, and so he just like grabs the kid by the shoulders and says stop, and then the kid like immediately puts up his hands and he says don't shoot, and everybody in the room at South by was just like, oh yeah, because we're at this point where we have to teach kids the correct response to police officers or people when they yell at you, to just say don't shoot immediately. Yeah. And that, I don't know. that one really got me when I was watching it in the theater. And whoa.
And this is not a movie that I think really portrays the Blue Lives Matter in a purely negative light.
No.
Yeah, it really does, and it actually paints the police officer at the end in as positive a light as it can given the situation, which I thought was really mature, like
for sure,
and in a way that didn't seem preachy at all, in a way that gave you the evidence and what happened and allowed you to draw your own conclusions. Which I think it was more powerful than a Spike Lee style of how he would portray the same message.
Yeah, for sure.
What I thought was also very interesting was it tackled another question that's like less in the media, but also like a very significant problem for those in urban areas, which is gentrification, and that it's like. Which is really where most of the comedy comes from, is just making fun of hipsters and with their wooden ties and suspenders and artisanal bicycles, artisan sailboats, which again, just like the Blue Lives Matter movement, it doesn't go out and the movie does not hate hipsters. It's just honest about what their effect on communities is, and it even points out that the effects aren't like entirely like. Or they're not entirely negative, but there are obvious negative repercussions to it. And watching some of the characters react to these people who are out of town and raising rent prices and kind of pushing them out of where they've grown up, and watching them react to it in a way that's like simultaneously angry and kind of helpless was something that I found like very, very moving and tragic, that there's no real easy fix to this problem.
I think that's such an interesting point you bring up of what does Spike Lee's Blindspotting look like? And obviously it would be in New York, not Oakland. But this story, it would still be from a black guy's perspective. You'd be following Daveed Diggs around, probably New York. But I feel like what you were saying, it would be a Spike Lee, it would be a lot angrier instead of comedic. And I think it would paint both the hipster kind of gentrification issue as well as the police issue as these are the villains and Daveed Diggs is the hero. And I think that would turn a lot of people off. And I know for sure it would turn a lot of Texans off, and they'd be like, oh, just another Spike Lee joint. They're going to just paint our viewpoints as stupid and villainous. But like what you're saying is when they're comparing the Blue Lives Matter versus the Black Lives Matter movement, and I felt that guilt of like, that's so painful that that's the response. It wasn't because they were saying Blue Lives Matter is stupid, or people who would respond in Blue Lives Matter is stupid, or that's not a valid point of view. It was more saying from this African-American man's perspective, that's heartbreaking. And it wasn't vilifying anything like I think like Spike Lee would. But
which
just
of course Klansmen should be vilified, which makes sense that Spike Lee made BlackkKlansman and not Blindspotting.
But he has made other films that follow, like I haven't seen Malcolm X and I haven't seen 25th Hour or even his most recent Chirac, but I feel like he's Chirac, whatever. But I feel like he's known to be an angry filmmaker, even when he's dealing with the Ku Klux Klan or when he's dealing with gentrification. And I think it just speaks to the power of this movie that it so successfully delivers this message without vilifying anyone. And I think that makes it more open to anyone. Like, I would show this movie to pretty much anyone, and they might not agree with it, they might not like it, but they're not going to get offended by it, which I think is just crazy to do given its subject matter.
Right. I think if you want to give a message to the people who need to hear it, you need to have some sort of objectivity.
For sure.
And this movie achieves that way more than BlackkKlansman. Like, if you're gonna show a white nationalist BlackkKlansman, they're gonna like walk out of the theater in the first like 5 minutes. But if you maybe if you show them Blindspotting, like they'd be a little more open to it. Like, because you can make movies that have like a very strong message, but if nobody who needs to hear it is listening to it, then
exactly,
what's the point?
And then we can shift over to our 1001 movie to see before you die in a second. One more thing about Blindspotting is there are two to three musical sequences.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously they have musical backgrounds with clipping and stuff. I saw it with my girlfriend and she did not like the musical aspect. She said it was too kind of mystical. It kind of took her out of the experience. And she said she would have preferred if they had just not had the rapping in there and kept it much more realistic. And she felt that would have been a better way to deliver the message. I took the opposite approach in the scenes where he's rapping his feelings and kind of the message of the movie, I thought it was inventive and some of my favorite parts of the movie. So what were your guys' thoughts on? I would just, for the main thing, I'll say like the climax scene involves rapping. What were your thoughts on that scene?
In my theater, there were a group of people laughing during that scene, which really, yes. My brother and I both looked at each other and we were like, man, like we're just in mutual fury. But
that's crazy.
Yeah, because we were both really trying to get into this, and these people were just like cracking up and yelling at the screen. But I think I'm trying my best to take that out of my experience.
Yeah,
I thought it was really moving, and that both of the characters, also the way it's shot, how like. Each time it goes between characters, it gets like the frame gets closer and closer. I thought it made it really intimate. And as far as like the soundtrack, I thought the soundtrack was great, and I'm gonna listen to it as on my ride to Austin today. But also every time they inserted music, I think most of the time it was during a car ride. So for me, it was as if like you were just listening to music as you were going from one destination to the next. So I thought it blended pretty well. Yeah. And one more thing, as far as like them just kind of like rapping nonchalantly, like I've seen people like just kind of freestyle just like to pass the time, so I didn't find that unrealistic at all.
Yeah, it was a little bit jarring for me seeing him rap at the end, especially, and I didn't I had to get used to it.
Sure.
Because it wasn't like really a big part of any other part of the movie. Yeah. Except for that hair scene.
And then they rap when they're moving a little bit. Like they've established that they've rapped before.
It's like pretty chill.
Yeah, it's not like an intense freestyle.
More like rhyming. Yeah. But yeah, in that last scene, it was jarring at first, but once I got used to it, I was into it. I was like, yeah, that's an interesting way, a more
nuanced.
Yeah, a nuanced way of. And nuanced is our word of the day. It's our sponsor.
Today's episode is sponsored by Nuanced.
But yeah, I thought that was a nice and clever way of doing something that hadn't really been done before. Yeah.
So I think it probably has like 2 or 3 more weeks in the theater. It'll come out on Blu-ray probably in October. So cannot stress it enough. Go see Blindspotting. Have we said nuanced a bunch?
He said it a couple times.
I tried not to use the word nuance when talking about what I didn't like about BlackkKlansman, and then just couldn't because I couldn't think of any synonyms.
That's a good word.
Yeah.
Nuance.
Nuance.
All right.
We are potential.
So that wraps up our current movie reviews. We conclude every episode by asking our guests to suggest a movie from the 1001 Movies to See Before You Die list. We'll have that link in the show notes if you want to run through it. And so we had Kula, asked him what he would like to bring, and he chose number 1010. That is Memento, which you alluded to earlier.
Wait, 1010?
Yeah. They update it. So the list came out in like 2000, and so like number 1000 is from 2000. So we had like Dark Knight was like number 1100 something.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's technically 1,450 movies to see before you die.
Okay.
Which has a similar ring, I think.
Yeah, same thing. So why did you bring Memento, and what does it mean to you?
Okay. As far as like, there are some movies where you see and even if you can't predict the ending, you kind of like you've seen something at least kind of similar to this before. At least I know non-narrative or non-linear narrative structure is not something that's like completely new at the point when this movie came out, but when I started to watch Memento, and the opening shot is like in reverse, and you see like what's going on, you're in for something that's like different than pretty much anything else you've ever seen. And the reason I like it is it is a movie that asks you to be extremely invested in what is going on, and you have to be paying attention 100% of the time, or else the movie does not make sense. And even if you are paying attention 100% of the time, if you don't fully internalize some of the things, then it might go over your head. But some people might find that jarring. I know when I watched it with my sister, she found that jarring, although she still liked it. But it's basically the plot, for people who do not know, is this man with short-term memory loss is trying to find the murderer of his wife. But the way the movie is shot is from his perspective. So it will show a scene that happens towards the end, and then it will show another scene that seems to have nothing to do with the previous scene, but then it will end where the last scene began. So you are now put in the shoes of this protagonist who has this debilitating mental illness, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And I've never been put into the shoes of a protagonist as effectively as this movie does. And it also asks a very scary question, which is, to what point or to what extent is the human experience still relevant if you don't have memories to fall back on? And it's just it scares the heck out of me, like trying to put myself in this person's situation and trying to think like what life would be like without memory. And just the way the kind of the fear and the intrigue are what makes this movie different than anything else I've seen. And I just loved it.
That's awesome. I had not seen it before. So this was the first movie I actually had to watch for the podcast, and I absolutely loved it. I think the only thing I knew going in, two things, was Christopher Nolan directed it, and that there's some form of nonlinear storytelling that he's known for involved. And then I knew that it had a guy with tattoos, and that was about the extent of my knowledge on this. So I went in as blind as you could be. I didn't know who was in it until the credits rolled. I really enjoyed it. My favorite parts, I think, were the black and white scenes when he was in you're dealing with a bunch of timelines, but one of the timelines is in black and white, and he's telling the story of Sammy Jenkins or Jenkins, something like that, and that's played by Steven Tobolowsky, who I only knew from a comedic role in Silicon Valley. Like, he had done like only comedy roles, and he was like a side character, and he delivers, I think, the best performance in the movie as Sammy Jenkins. I saw it yesterday. I came away and I was like, I was waiting for the next, it's Jenkins, something like that. I was waiting for the next time he was on screen, because the story of him and his wife, because basically he has a similar disability to the main character of the film, and so whenever he's kind of recalling the story of this man and how he dealt with the same illness that Guy Pearce is dealing with, I was just like heartbroken. I was like, this is so sad. I get it. And I think what you were saying about, is life worth living without memory, and what does that mean to be human with you can't remember anything. I think the most impactful moment of the movie for me was when his friend, or you don't know if he's a friend, but like, what's his name? It starts with a T, something like that. Teddy, thank you. He asks, his goal is to kill someone in the movie, and Teddy asks him while he's on one of his kind of rampages, like, oh, I need to kill this guy, is, why does it matter if you kill him if you can't even remember? And he just keeps telling himself that, oh, if I complete this goal, like, I'll find meaning, and somehow I'll remember, and even if I don't remember, I'll just know inherently that, like, my life has found meaning. And I just think that was heartbreaking, and that was the most emotionally resonant moment for me, I think. Ben, what were your thoughts?
So I wasn't as emotionally invested, but from like a storytelling standpoint and an intrigue standpoint, I was really engaged with this movie, especially because the nonlinear storytelling aspect. Christopher Nolan does it in pretty much every movie that he makes.
But at the time, it was cool.
This felt like the first time in one of those movies that he's made that it felt necessary. This is, because if it had been told in a linear standpoint, then you would have known, like, the whole time, like, what's going on. Like, it just wouldn't have worked. I have a hair in my mouth. But
shout out to Dunkirk for unnecessarily making this story.
Dunkirk was just, I didn't see it, but I heard that it was all over the place. But so. Yeah, I agree with that. I also like the photograph element of it. I thought that was a clever way of, like, keeping you guessing of, like, he writes things down on the photographs, like, don't trust this person, but, like, you never know if somebody just told him to write that on there, or if he, like, wrote that because of something that they did to him. And so it really kept me engaged and guessing, and like you said, it requires an active viewer. You don't just, like, put it on and, like,
do homework while
you watch it. You have to like write things down. Not quite, but you have to think about it while you watch it, and I really appreciated it.
I think it took me around one or two laps around, like what you were saying, it kind of resets in a way without going into spoilers. It took me around one or two times to kind of see like, oh, this is what the movie's going to be. So that's probably like around the 15 or 20 minute mark. And then I was suddenly thinking like, what are all the things in the first 20 minutes that I missed without knowing that was a story structure? So I'm sure if you rewatch this, you can just say like, oh, from the second shot, they're setting up this story just because it's so well written. It's based off his brother Jonathan Nolan's short story. Have you seen the short film?
I've seen him talk about it. I know they came up with the idea on a car ride, and then they just turned it into a movie at some point.
That's cool.
Yeah. One of the things I thought was also really interesting is the characters who know the protagonist are able to reset their relationship with him every time his memory resets. So you can see this, like while these characters are changing, he is staying the same, and it's like it's very surreal. And you know, I'm a fan of character arcs, but this character like inherently cannot have an arc. So it's so it's interesting to see like this person who is just stuck in the same place, and while other people change, and that's another aspect I found very interesting.
Yeah, I when I was watching it, I first thought, what would I do if I were in his situation? But then I also thought, what would I do if I knew somebody in that situation? Because it kind of brings out the worst in people. Like they can just take advantage of him and like say, "Oh, hey, you were gonna pay me $50." Like you could do that. Yeah. Like it brings that up, and I think that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought those scenes were. I think the two supporting characters, Joe Pantoliano and Carrie-Anne Moss, I think from Lost. Isn't she in Lost?
And The Matrix.
Yeah.
No, she's not. Is she in Lost?
I don't know. I thought Carrie-Anne Moss was the girl from Daredevil.
Wait. She is.
No, she's from Lost. Yeah,
she is. Yeah.
Yeah, but both of their characters I thought were really well done. I definitely enjoyed the. T name again? What's
Teddy.
Name? Teddy. I really enjoyed Teddy's scenes more than Carrie-Anne Moss's scenes, just because I believed in his performance more, and I was more intrigued by where that story would go. Whereas with the Carrie-Anne Moss story, I kind of thought I did kind of know where it was going pretty early on. Whereas with Teddy, I was like, this can go 5 different ways, and I'm not really sure where it would go.
And even at the end of the movie, you're not entirely sure which direction it went.
Yeah,
because you're not given enough information.
Right.
I do like how there is a little bit of ambiguity as to what is going on with this man's life. Like how you don't know where in his progression this story starts and ends. Like it could have been that he's been looking for 2 years, or that he just started, or depending on which characters to trust, which is also the scenario the protagonist is in. So it kind of as another way that it really puts you in his own shoes.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say your relationship with Christopher Nolan is as like a whole?
Oh, okay. I don't think I like him as a director. I love him as a director for a couple of his movies, but I don't find him the most consistent, I would say, because I was not a fan of Interstellar, but I liked that he tried to bring science into a movie. Neil deGrasse Tyson talked at length about how much he liked that. I know there is a very avid following of Christopher Nolan and fandom of Christopher Nolan on Twitter and IMDb, which I think might be a symptom of one. It's really easy to explain a Christopher Nolan movie and then have someone be interested. Like you say, oh yeah, it's this dude it's a story that's told in reverse with a dude with short-term memory loss trying to find a murderer's wife. You're like, oh cool, I'm in. Or it's this dude it's this movie where this guy goes inside these dreams, and then they go inside the dreams and their dreams and have to fight these, faceless antagonists that are brought up by this person's subconscious. You're like, wow, that sounds cool. And like they're movies that are very easy to sell, and then once you watch them, they're executed well for the most part. So. And not super controversial, and also the fact that like all of his protagonists are like white straight males also make them less controversial and easier for a broad audience to enjoy, which I think might be attributing to why they're more popular on the Twitters and IMDb's of the world.
I didn't even think about that. Every one of his movies is mostly
and most of them also have dead wives.
Yeah, for real. Yeah. Ben, why do you think? So obviously, what you were alluding to is that Christopher Nolan. It's kind of a meme now how much like film Twitter, people from 18 to 30 absolutely love Christopher Nolan, the film bro mentality. Yeah. Why do you think that kind of mentality connects so well with Christopher Nolan?
Well, I think in 2008 with The Dark Knight and the Batman Begins before that and Dark Knight Rises after that, he got a hook. Like people, like for me personally, I can only talk from my experience. When I saw The Dark Knight, I was just blown away by it, and it was like right at that age where I was like, "Oh, I love superheroes, and superhero movies are cool." And it was the first time that I started, like, I saw all three movies, and I saw like the parallels between them, and like the style, and I was like, why are all these movies so similar? And it was like the first time I'd seen one director. And then what do you call it, what's that movie, Inception? After that, you see like a whole bunch of parallels as well. Dead Wives. And I don't know, I think it was just, for me, just seeing all these movies in a row. I disagree. I think he is very consistent of a filmmaker in terms of quality. Even though I didn't like Interstellar, like, that's still, like, it was a well-made movie. And I think for me it was just because he hooked me like when I was like 13 or 14, and I've just been watching his movies. And
that's interesting. So he made his kind of claim to fame as this kind of film Twitter generation was right in their prime movie going years. So like 13 to 23 is the age we were when Dark Knight came out, and then that follows up with Inception, and suddenly you have a generation of film fans that their favorite director is Christopher Nolan. And
he does make a lot of movies. Like in the past like 10 years, he's made a lot of movies, and
a lot of good movies.
His pacing is also very good. Like I can't remember a time in a Christopher Nolan movie when I was like bored. There was always something going on where I'm like, okay, I'm invested in this scene at least, which means that, you know, it's easier for a popular audience to follow, whereas, you know, some other, you know, great filmmakers that with slower pacing might not get as avid of a following. Another fun fact about Christopher Nolan is that he's green colorblind, so that explains kind of the tint of his movies, that they're all kind of blue and
interesting.
That's
gray.
Funny.
That's weird.
Where would you all place Memento? You can do an actual ranking, or you could just do tiers. Where would you place? I guess I'll start with Kula. Where would you place Memento in his filmography?
I think I have the unpopular opinion of liking Memento more than The Dark Knight.
The door's right there if you want.
Okay, bye guys. But and just because like I love The Dark Knight too. It is my second favorite Christopher Nolan movie. Just some of the hand-to-hand action sequences I thought were underwhelming. But I mean, it's kind of a nitpick, and it's still great. After that, Inception. And then the other two Batman movies, and I haven't seen. Interstellar would be my least favorite, and The Prestige would probably be a little lower down there too. But I mean, there's a reason he's a popular director, is because he's good.
Even his worst movies are still better.
Exactly. And when I said inconsistent, I meant like in comparison to a director like Denis Villeneuve, who I've loved all of his movies, or someone else like as far as like my favorite directors, he's the least consistent in my opinion. But.
And while he has a style, I think it might not be as different or as unique as other director styles. So if you see a Tarantino movie or Wes Anderson movie, you could say that's a Tarantino or Wes Anderson movie. And while you can do that with some of Christopher Nolan's movies, I feel like while impressive, his overall like style and stuff isn't too different from say like a David Fincher or a Denis Villeneuve. It's different, but it definitely has aspects of the same. In terms of ranking, I would agree with you somewhat. I would have my tier 1 Christopher Nolan movies in order. Would be Dark Knight, Inception, and Memento. Tier 2 would be the other Batman movies, and Dunkirk probably, though I wasn't really very high on Dunkirk.
I like Dunkirk a lot, for people who are curious,
Yeah. Would it be like tier 2 for you, or tier 1?
It's on the cusp. Like, I don't think it's as good as Inception, Memento, or The Dark Knight, but I think it's probably one of his stronger ones. I like the realism of it, and the fact that the lack of character in that is more like understandable, because it's trying to portray war in the most realistic aspect it can, and it's really pretty. But I'd say probably low tier 1, high tier 2.
I'd like to see him stay away from the inverted time stuff, though.
Yes.
The fact that was in Dunkirk, I mean, at that point it's becoming more of a gimmick instead of an artistic choice. But I guess we'll see when he does his next movie. Ben, how would you rank the Christopher Nolan movies?
I have a list on Letterboxd. 1, Dark Knight. 2, Memento. 3, Inception. So yeah, tier 1, pretty much the same as
All
you.
agreed.
Then The Prestige. It's high up on my list.
Yeah.
I just liked it a lot when I saw it, just because I guess I hadn't seen. It was like the one of his movies that I hadn't seen, and I had enjoyed like pretty much every other one, and I was just really hyped going into it. But yeah, I enjoyed it, and I'm so stupid. I didn't see the twin twist coming. No, I know.
I will give a caveat. One reason why I think it's so low for me is literally the week before I had planned to watch it with my family, it got spoiled for me. I'd stayed away the whole time, and then literally 7 days before, there was like, the twin thing.
Yeah.
Spoilers for
shoot. Yeah, shoot.
No, it's 12 years old. It's fine.
Yeah. Well, fine. If you haven't seen it,
watch Memento.
Yeah.
But then
if you try to spoil Memento, it's hard to, because it's such a complicated story.
Yeah.
And then the other 2 Dark Knight movies, and then Interstellar, and then Following very last. And probably not many people have seen Following, but
it was his first one.
It was his first movie. It's
Where'd you say Insomnia was on that?
What?
Where'd you say Insomnia was on the list again?
I haven't seen Insomnia.
Oh, me neither.
So, yeah.
All right. I guess we'll end this segment. Kula, if you had to, or for those out there that haven't seen Memento, if you had to give like 30-second to a 1-minute pitch of why they need to see Memento before they die, what would you say?
All right. First thing, off the bat, it challenges you, and it will make you think about. At least for me, it made me think about just everyday life differently, and that, like, how would I handle this without memory? Which I know is not like it just makes you look at things differently. 1, 2, it's fun trying to keep up with the storyline, and there are funny parts where they use the nonlinear story as a gag, and then there are other parts where they use it as a way to make to create intrigue. And I like, in addition to it being important and challenging, it is also I think a very fun movie for those same reasons. And there's no movie you can see that would substitute Memento. So, and it's also not that long. So,
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on and bringing Memento, making me watch it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, great conversation. So we're going to be gone for next week because we all have to do our respective move-ins. But we will be back at the end of August with a guest that is yet to be determined. We'll kind of do an August catch-up episode. We'll have reviews of the Happy Time Murders, which looks pretty crazy. Searching with John Cho. And then The Miseducation of Cameron Post, which it stars Chloe Grace Moretz and is about a gay conversion camp. So we'll do that. Expect that probably the last week of August, first week of September. Thank you all for listening. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, and then also follow our Twitter, which is @HookedOnMovies_. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.